culture.
Yeah.
They know the business they're in. They know the way they want to manage it. They know what they expect from their people. You might go in and say that manifests itself in a culture of, but they don't get lost in these esoteric debates about culture or something that's quite as nebulous.
But Mick, those businesses often work their culture as well from their customer's perspective.
Sure.
There's a great clarity around what the customer wants, and they line it in behind that. Whereas other people, as you say, are looking at themselves all the time, rather than what's needed out there in the market.
I mean, culture is very. I mean, I work with across a spectrum of clients, and you walk into organisations, and it's just amazing in our business because you can walk in 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. So you're actually going into lots of organisations, and the culture change between one and the next. You just feel it at reception. You feel it out in the car park. You feel it in the car park, which is and nothing wrong. Neither one is better than the other, but there's a certain change. But making that, I think the point that our viewer here has is that can we actually decide, now that we've come through this process of pain, and we've invested all of this, can we now decide that from now on, here's the culture? I presume that comes from behaviour at the top and then all the management of that. Frank,
just tell you a story.
Tell me a story.
Last week I was sitting in a reception. Funny when you that whole thing, and I can't define this, but I'm sitting in a reception in a big organisation, and I'm waiting for somebody usual. And when you go to organisations, first thing you notice, they always keep you waiting. Secondly, the chief or somebody near the top came walking along with a senior manager, and they were deep in conversation. And there was a bit of litter in the reception floor, and he looked at it, and I could see he was thinking, will I go and pick it up or will I not? And I could see that I was watching him to see would he go and pick it up, and he thought about it and he didn't.
Yeah.
And I formed conclusions about that organisation. Had he gone and picked it up, I would have been very positive. And that to me was culture.
Yeah, you're right. Culture was
everything.
As I said, he didn't think anybody was watching there, Frank, but you were.
Now I have a perception of that organisation just defined by that one moment, because he was the chief, or if not the chief, he was.
So if you recognise yourself out there on that,
it's a topic we could return to, because culture is worth debating. Because, it's important to understand what your culture is, first of all, and to understand how difficult it is to change. A lot of people come into an organisation, especially well-established organisations, find the unwritten rules, which are really the culture, very difficult, and bounce against glass doors, and don't realise they're bouncing against them.
Yeah, there's an Australian chap who wrote a very interesting article a few months ago, and he doesn't use the word culture at all. He talks about unwritten ground rules.
Yeah, but you notice them when you come into an organisation, but they have. But again, I'm coming back to this point here, and our viewer here asking us this question, and what I'm getting from you guys is that yes, you can decide, but it has to be writing down a culture is neither here nor there. It's how people behave, and as Frank has well pointed out here and well illustrated, it's basically how the top behaves downwards, because it's obviously culture is how it's done around here.
It's like people, how you appoint people, take their rewards, everything. It creates the culture, the DNA of the organisation.
Now, one of the things that we're talking about, they're just bringing it on further, talking about the skilling up for the new environment. Mick was talking there about the fact that maybe it doesn't need training courses. Mick, we sell training courses here.
We won't be returning next week.
We thought we had to.
We'll make an exception for communication.
All right. Thanks, Mick. That's the last of Mick I want to see. You think we're in here every Thursday morning for the good of our health?
And by the way, when we're having the meeting afterwards, you can bring a friend.
Having said that, Mick, haven't we considered there is a role for training? Is that what you were going to say, Mick, on that? Yeah.
Well, in the space of a few minutes, I think I've changed my mind.
Sign of a great leader that can change his mind from a convincing argument, isn't it?
Humility is a great quality.
But look,
if you are giving a person a new job, I mean, you've got to assess to what extent can they change from what they have been doing to what they're doing. So there may be different interventions required there. It might be a skills training issue where you would need training. It might be a coaching issue, or it might be just a management issue where you're managing through the change. So it does depend on organisations. I spoke on one of the previous sessions about research McKinsey's did on change programs, and they said one of the 4 key reasons why they fail is that people don't skill adequately for the new organisation. In other words, it's okay to paint a direction, but if you're changing a lot of your practices, do you have the skills to actually change them? So it is an important...
one thing that I find, I know you guys do, is that people say they're given a new role and you find, I'm grand in this role, but they're not, because it's slightly different, and they mightn't even articulate the fact that they're slightly uncomfortable. And one of the biggest, we will know, demotivators for people in an organisation, for a person working in an organisation, A, is not being clear what you're supposed to do, B, not getting the feedback on how well you're doing, but C, not actually knowing 100% how you go about doing it, and I suppose that needs to be. How do you figure that out from a HR perspective? How do you figure out that the person's kind of 80% kind of comfortable but might not articulate the other 20?
Well, the articulation is going to be difficult because we just think about what you've come through.
Yeah.
They're hardly going to put their hand and say, "Oh, by the way, I'm not getting on too well here, am I?"
No.
So that's the first thing you got to accept. The second thing, and it's back to the conversation we had a few moments ago. That's down to line management, local line management, being given the tools and the resources to help people through that transition. So they have good conversations with them.
And that's why we talked about it earlier, that's the idea of the role clergy workshops, is to bring people into a safe environment and say, you've been operating in a new way for 6 weeks, 2 months, you're only talking about half an hour to an hour, how's it going, and let people share, so that somebody learned that the problem I've been having, everyone around the table has been having it, and we can articulate it and come to a solution, or the fact that I can't manage a technology or understand how to get into the web or whatever it is, that others are having the same problem because of X, Y, and Z. So that is a very good way of doing it, pulling people together in a safe environment. It only takes half an hour.
But the safe environment, you're taking an almost safe environment for granted. We've just come to an environment where it hasn't been safe. But basically keep the head down in case you get a tap on the shoulder.
The key word there was,
mix my metaphors.
The key word there was a safe environment. If you can create the safe environment where people feel confident enough that they can say those things, you're going to get change faster. But if it's not a safe environment, people are going to be more protective, keep the thoughts to themselves, and it all becomes much more difficult to affect.
It's really part of facilitation.
And part of creating that safe environment is, when you've gone through the transition and the layoffs and so on and so forth, that you end up in a situation where if you are making investments, people actually see you're committed to the organisation. And certainly the experience around this table is that where you see that begin to happen, people then suddenly say, they're in it again for the game, for the longer game, and they'll buy into that.
Yeah, okay guys, we're going to have to return to this. I think there's a lot more in this here. We'll try maybe work it through a case study next week in terms of very specific things. Have you something very wise to say, Frank?
Well,
sorry.
I want us to project forward, and I want us to use as the case study Jose Mourinho and Real Madrid.
Frank,
same punters, different manager.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we'd actually we'd have
Can we afford to bring him in?
At 11.5 million a year.
I would like to check on that.
No, that's okay. We've got a Munster guy here, the Leinster guy here. We'll leave that out of it for a minute.
We have a final to go on Saturday.
Yeah,
forgot about that.
Okay, fine. We'll return to this maybe with a case study next week, because I think it's a very interesting topic. There's a lot to be said about it, and also, as always, I mean, our email is on the website there. You get through to us. Now that you know it's kind of area that we're touching on, there's lots of issues in relation to that. If you actually let us know between times what are the areas you'd like us to cover next week through the case study that we're doing, ones that make sense to you, ones that apply to your organisation, and we'll do that for you. And just to remind you again, as we were kind of half hinting at it here early on, that we're actually in the business of doing this, and the guys here we're
except me.
in terms of consultancy and helping you out. So if you have an issue in your own organisation that'd like to talk to us about, we'll have a chat, which won't cost you anything for a while. We'll have a quick chat. It'll cost you after the chat. Is that right? But we'll have the chat. We'll do a bit of an analysis for you and have a look at your own business. And if you want to talk to us, we'd only delighted to do it. Anyway, but returning at the same time, same place next week in the dealing with the case study. So for myself, Peter Finnegan, I don't